What's up, Friday? Yeah, feeling it right now. I'm excited. We have Daniel Jeremiah. We're going to talk draft. We're going to talk LSU Bama. We're going to talk hypothetical LSU against Ohio State, his quarterback rankings, the depth of receivers, story time as well. When they drafted a player and then didn't draft him while they were on the phone with him. So good stuff from NFL Network and former front office exec Daniel Jeremiah. Thank you for listening to the Russillo podcast, because today's episode of the Ryen Russillo Show is brought to you by State Farm. If you're fumbling with insurance, State Farm agents are here to help, because with over 19,000 agents that are local to you and available to help, whether you connect in person, by phone, or through the State Farm mobile app, agents are here to help. So go with the one that has coverage and agents you can count on. State Farm. Talk to an agent today. Kyle, you're going to have to check me on my breathing on this one. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I can handle that. Why is that?
I'm a little worked up with this Myles Garrett stuff.
Oh.
And I did not tweet about it last night because I left that to, I would say, everybody else. And you did not disappoint, world. Okay, so let's start with this. The Browns get a primetime win against a division rival where they look like they're the better team, and thus going with the, hey, how about those sneaky Steelers alive in the playoffs technically after the end of last weekend, and they looked bad, and the Browns looked good. But we all know the play. We're talking about Myles Garrett swinging his helmet at Mason Rudolph's head. Mason Rudolph's helmet at Mason Rudolph's head after what looked to be like a late hit sort of by Garrett, and then everybody getting upset, and then it turns into this thing, and we got all sorts of content last night, and we got all sorts of content today. We are in a just absolute zone. I'm trying to think of what this is like. This is like the biggest market rally ever for people that do what I do, and I am just as guilty of it. So here is my opinion on all of this stuff as well. This is why people that commit murder take a chance with a jury, okay, based solely on the responses I've seen on this Garrett issue. If I were living in Alaska on a gold claim with one other guy without another tent 100 miles from us, and I shot and killed him, and they were like, how do you plead? I'd be like, I'll give it a shot, not guilty. There's got to be one of the 12 they're going to believe me. Did you see the Myles Garrett tweets? I'd be like, well, what do you mean, dude? Like, he's dead. Your roommate shot in the head. It was just you there. And I'm like, could have been a passerby. I'd be like, no, there are no passerbys. There's no tracks, nothing. Man, you don't know that. Yeah, but it was your gun. They tested you had gun residue on your hand. It proved that you had shot a gun that day. How do you know I wasn't skeet shooting? Because there were no skeets. There are no clays is the way I should frame it. You're like, well, it didn't say it was any good. You have text messages from you to him saying, I hate you. I'm going to kill you. You're like, no, that's just a prank we pull on each other. We're always sending each other death threats over text, just hoping somebody would believe it. Because what happened is we do this thing, and I don't know if this is just the United States, but it feels like it. I'm going to keep my expertise to the country that I've been living in my entire life. But we do this thing where the person to blame is staring at us right in the face. And yet we go, okay, I get it, but is there any way I can blame a bunch of other people first? We do it all the time. I'm not telling you to root for the NCAA. I'm not telling you the NCAA is right. I push back on destroying it all and not wanting any college football or a basketball tournament. Maybe that's me being selfishly motivated, and that's okay because I'm admitting it. But when a player who is a recruit or ends up enrolling breaks a very obvious rule, taking cash, either through himself, a handler, a relative, an AAU coach, any way you want to frame it, when you do that and you get caught and then you're not eligible, you still went ahead and broke that rule. But what people do, because everyone, again, hates the NCAA, they blame the NCAA system for saying, hey, the kid took the money. When it's like, okay, I get it. I get how you can come to that conclusion, but you still were aware of the rule and you knew what the rule was. And, a lot of people don't get caught, but some people do get caught. So can you just go ahead and blame everybody else first? And what is always my favorite thing is if you just paid the players, then these secret payments and this legal recruiting stuff wouldn't happen. That's never true, by the way. Baseball is one of my favorite ones, okay? Because instead of blaming the player who decides to take a needle and inject himself in the ass with a PED, we're like, yeah, but Bud Selig. Now, I don't like Bud Selig at all. The more I've read about him, the more I've heard about him, the more I go back and look at his own timeline of decisions, he was not a good commissioner. He gave teams to guys he liked. That was it. He just was like, I like you. I don't like you. Here's a baseball team. Every year he told us he no longer wanted to be MLB commissioner. That went over for like 2+ decades as he continued to give himself bigger and bigger raises and gave himself one of the most amazing exit compensation packages with the amount of money that he's making every year, absolutely doing nothing. Like, hey, dude, you weren't president. You ran baseball. Now, his argument is always, we expanded the playoffs. Cool. We had more than 4 teams in the playoffs. Congratulations. He says, look at the revenues. Hey, guess what? Look at the revenues everywhere with sports on television. Everybody made more money. That's what's happened the last 2 decades, okay? It wasn't you. You happen to be in charge, just like every one of these conference commissioners that's patting themselves on the backs for saying, look at all this extra revenue that we've generated. No, TV rights to sports became more and more important because of technology, not because of your brilliance. But Selig was always blamed, I thought, more than the players for the PED steroid era, as if he was complicit. Now, if you want to say he knew and he was complicit and the owners were counting their money in their back room and all this stuff, okay, I'll give you some of that. But it's a lot like the kid who's messed up, and then you look at the parent, and the parent's like, look, man, the first time your kid comes home drunk in high school, what am I supposed to do? Never let him out of the house again? Like, it's a gradual process to be like, hey, Toby's up to something. Hey, Toby's sleeping out more. Hey, Toby is missing for 3 days. Hey, how come Toby's outside of the Circle K with his shirt off and a neck tattoo that says ride or die and it's misspelled, okay? Like there's levels to this stuff where if you're the commissioner of baseball or you're an owner, the first time you hear a PED rumor in 1998, like what are you supposed to do? And again, in a way to try to find a way to blame someone else, so many people have been like, yeah, but baseball should have done. What about the guy injecting himself? What about the guy who's getting drugs illegally who decides I'm going to take it? And again, PEDs don't even really bother me the way we talked about the argument, and who to blame always bothered me. And if we're going to continue to do the blame thing, it's even more on the players when you look at Donald Fair, who was their rep, who in 2002, they came to an agreement. Remember the first PED agreement in baseball? It was 2002. First positive test, counseling. Second positive test, 15 games, then 25 games. The fourth one was like 100 games. It took you until your 5th positive steroid test to then be banned for life. And I'm not one of those guys that says, hey, the first positive test, there's a lifetime ban. That cleans it all up, because I would worry about false positives, okay? Because it does happen despite the fact that every single person in the history of the world has taken a bad protein shake that got popped for this stuff. So instead of just saying, hey, you know what? Can't we just look at the guy that did the thing wrong and put more of the blame on him? No, we are obsessed with assigning blame elsewhere when it is very easy to figure out who is to blame. And in the case of the Myles Garrett, Mason Rudolph back and forth, Garrett took it up a notch, and he's the one to blame. Okay, if I bump into you at a bar and you say what, and then I say what, and we stare at each other, and then I smash you across the forehead with a beer bottle, guess who upped the stakes? Me. Guess who everybody's going to be a little bit more on? Me. And I can't say, well, hey, it was crowded near the bathroom. If you take my parking spot and I stab you, guess who's in more trouble? Me, because I stabbed you. And I can't sit there and then blame the city for not having enough parking spaces. Like, well, and that's how it would play out on Twitter. Be like, well, look, Russillo stabbed a guy, but, there's after 5 o'clock, it's tough to find a meter, So now what do we do, right? Because we had all sorts of guys tweeting about this. Schefter's tweet where it was just one word, assault. I think there was a period at the end too. I didn't know what to do with that. I just was like, what? Like, okay. Ravel, who somehow made it about kids not wanting to play football, and then him deciding that he wasn't going to have babies have Twitter. I give up on that one. I didn't know what to do. And then Peter King did this thing where after decades of covering the game, now it's like, hey, you know what? Parents out there, hit me up. Now, maybe there's a column coming. I didn't know, but there was just a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff out there. And someone right now in the car is going, Ryan, how have you gone this long and not made it about race? I apologize for not making it about race sooner, because we all know that's where this was headed. And thank God it wasn't a Bosa clobbering Lamar Jackson over the head with a helmet, because I don't even know what the TV shows would be like today. But there was, I think, one reporter, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to pile on. The reporter did delete the tweet where the first thing that this reporter said was, Well, we don't know what Mason Rudolph said to Myles Garrett to have Garrett act that way. And look, I get that Rudolph was trying to pull Garrett's helmet off first, but Garrett crossed the line. Arian Foster, a.k.a. Bobby Fino, brought up a point, which is very hard as a white guy to tell the black guy he's wrong about, because there is some truth to this, that we embrace fighting in baseball. We embrace fighting in hockey, certainly. But then we have this weird thing when it's a basketball fight where it's like, oh, a black eye for the NBA. The Malice of the Palace is not anything any multi-billion-dollar business would want to have happen. But if I'm a black guy, I'm like, how come Mike Milbury hitting a fan in the head with his own shoe and crawling into the stands is funny? And how come Steven Jackson and Ron Artest is the worst thing in the history of sports? Now, maybe it's time, because I do believe there's a Cedric Maxwell play when he was at the Celtics in Philadelphia where he went into the stands, and we had a blast with that in Boston. But at the time, maybe that was just a Boston-Philly thing. I think time can heal some of these things. But what I don't want to do, even though I resist a lot of the mob mentality, and I certainly resist a lot of the race talk, I don't want to be the white guy that's telling the black guy, you know what? You're wrong that we look at all fights differently, because we do look at them differently. And I don't know what the answer to that one is. But I think in this case, with so many former black NFL players screaming at Myles Garrett that he should be suspended, not just for the rest of the season and even longer. And right now, I don't want to, it becomes a contest of who hates the act the most. If Myles Garrett's suspended for the rest of the season, I'm okay with that. If he's suspended into next year, no. If we give this thing a week and cool down, do we think it should even be the full season? I don't know. People are saying they've never seen this in the history of the game. That's also not true. The Antonio Smith play against Richie Incognito, which isn't that long ago, where he rips Incognito's helmet off, swings it at him, that could have been awful, all right? It could have been way worse. So we have seen some things like this. But what I will push back on is that because, and this becomes kind of that woke NFL thing that I don't even think is about race anymore. It's like, well, wait a minute. If you're watching the NFL, then you are complicit and you can't call out this act. That's bullshit. Because if I like the UFC and I'm super into MMA and I like guys getting knocked out, does that mean that if another guy decides to rip out the other dude's eyeball, that I have to be okay with that because I hit yes on a pay-per-view order? Of course not. Why is it that when it's really reasonable, easy to define stuff, we're always trying to blur what the actual lines are? The reasonable person says, hey, I like football, I like tackling, and I'm way more aware of concussions, and I don't like jacked up segments as much. That is an evolving football fan's own, consumption of the product, right? But it doesn't mean that you have to sit there and go, well, because I like tackling and I like the physical nature of football, I also like when people rip off the other dude's helmets and try to smash them in the face with it. That's not a blurred line. That's a really easy thing to identify. This is this, and I'm okay, and this is the part that's wrong. And I don't have to like it all because I'm on my couch at 8 Eastern watching Thursday Night Football. So you got it from all angles on this one. And I'm not telling you I know who should be suspended what. And now it's turning into a little bit more of a how come Mason Rudolph thing isn't suspended? And then it gets circled back to the race thing again where it's like, oh, Rudolph isn't suspended. It sounds very similar to when Josh Brown wasn't suspended by the Giants, the kicker, with his history of domestic violence accusations and everything that went on there. And it was a really, really complicated, weird story. And guess what? It became about race that he wasn't suspended when I'm like, could the NFL be this dumb to make it look this bad because of perceptions here? And then he was suspended. And then you're like, okay, but it was still too late. But then Tyreek Hill wasn't suspended because the NFL couldn't come up with anything conclusive. So then what? So instead of making it about who we should also blame, instead of making it about societal issues, how about we just, for a small change here, make it the simple thing? And the simple thing is a guy swung a helmet at another dude, and he's going to be punished. And everything before that isn't as important as that act. Joining us here in a second from NFL Network and his Move the Sticks podcast, Daniel Jeremiah. But first, State Farm. And now it's time for the State Farm Safe Bet of the Week. The Oakland Raiders, you can count on. You didn't expect me to be saying that, did you? You had all your John Gruden memes ready to go, and last year, your memes would have been timely. But not this year. This is a team that started off 1-2 and was away from home for 6 straight weeks, okay? They had to play Chicago in London. So they get back home, close loss. Actually, the Green Bay loss wasn't close, but there was a competitive game. Then Carr had a fumble, close loss to Houston. You're still not sure what to do. They're 3-4. Then they beat Detroit. They beat the Chargers, and now they're playing Cincinnati. The Oakland Raiders are sniffing the playoffs. And the reason why I say that against Cincinnati is because Cincinnati is terrible. They allow the most yards per game by like a good margin. I don't even know how they score 15 points a game. They've already benched your quarterback who got sacked all the time. They can't run the football. They're the third worst team when it comes to that. They're the fourth worst team in turnover differential. They have got Mixon going a little bit there lately. But yes, I am telling you that you can count on the Oakland Raiders against the Cincinnati Bengals. If you're fumbling with insurance, State Farm agents are here to help because with over 19,000 agents, they're local to you and available to help. Whether you connect in person, by phone, or through the State Farm mobile app, agents are here to help. So go with the one that has coverage and agents you can count on. Kind of like how you can count on John Gruden in his second year and this squad to flirt with the playoffs, at least until week 11. State Farm. Talk to an agent today. Let's talk to Daniel Jeremiah. As I said, I was lucky enough to be down there in Tuscaloosa on the sideline for my 12th Bama-LSU game, Daniel. So you break it down. We know the numbers of draft picks. It was somewhere in the 20s, depending on who you asked. What did you see as far as NFL talent is concerned when we saw those two teams play last weekend?
Yeah, it was loaded, man. I've been to 2 of those games. Gosh, you've been to 12 times you've done that one?
Yeah.
That's legit. Yeah, look, I was there. Were you there before we get into this one, were you there for the Jamarcus Russell comeback game?
Yeah, no, 2008 was my first one because it was Saban's first game back at Baton Rouge after he left.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I was at the Jamarcus Russell one, and then I took my son, who was like 12 at the time, and I was like, this is going to be a life-changing experience. I'm taking him to LSU night game, Bama. So this is a couple years ago. Really low scoring game. I think Alabama might have been like 12-0 or something like that. Is that what it was? At halftime, he was like, "Dad, can we go?" Like, this does not have the impact I was thinking it was going to have on my son. But the environment was great for me. When I looked at this game, though, I mean, yeah, man, it just loaded. The receiver, I think we'll look back like 5 years from now, Ryan, and say like this is one of the best games. You know, we'll count the number of NFL stud receivers in this game, and we'll be floored with just how ridiculous it was.
So, how many NFL receivers are there? Because we know the depth of Bama, but now we're starting to realize this LSU crew's up there too.
Well, I mean, you've got the 4 for Bama that everybody knows about. Then you go to LSU. I did not know as much about Justin Jefferson until I really studied him this week. He is really, really good, man. You know, they've got the underclassman and Chase, who's a big-time player. They've got a couple other guys that'll be, you know, fringe NFL guys. They're going to be around. But man, if you just take the 2 studs from LSU, the 4 guys from Bama, I mean, all 6 of those guys have like Pro Bowl ability, which is ridiculous. To have 6 Pro Bowl receivers participating in one game, I think that's very possible.
God. Yeah, because I had sent you, and I'm sure you love this as a guy that studies it far more than I do, but when you were like, man, Jordan Jefferson, like you think Jefferson could be the number 1 receiver taken next year's draft?
I don't think it's put to bed yet. I don't. I think that when you look at everything I've been told, people went in there, like you get the 40 times that people tell you that they run, then you also get the GPS numbers, and the GPS numbers are off the charts for him. Now, it's Ruggs is on a different planet with how fast he's going to run. But Jefferson is going to run in the 4.3s. You know, he's got size. He's tough. He's a great route runner. He can play. He can work inside. He can work outside. You know, Jerry Jeudy's is the best route runner in the country, no doubt. But Judy's not the thickest guy. He's not the strongest guy, and he has some drops. So, I mean, those are, you know, you're nitpicking at this point in time. But I've talked to teams around the league that have Ruggs as the top receiver at Alabama, that Judy's not even the top receiver there. So I just think that this is not a closed case at this point in time.
Because one of my things with this that I always have to remind myself, and it's worth reminding everybody listening, be like, well, wait a minute, why do you like Jefferson better than this guy? But when it's underclassmen, you guys just don't bother evaluating them. When it's somebody who's not going to be eligible, you have hundreds of players you have to watch anyway. Yeah. And somebody pops up. Because I've always thought like Jamar was maybe the better playmaker, but you know, really, that's the depth of this LSU receiving core. There's going to be different guys all the time. And that's been the same case with Bama, where there's even moments like watching Waddle return that punt. I'm like, there's no way it's closed off. And then he's up the left sideline. Yeah, right. And then Ruggs will have a play. But one thing that surprised me, like you're right about Jeudy and his hips and the lack of thickness that maybe some of those other guys have. But what I've always liked about him is at the end of the play, he still wants to hit somebody. And maybe that's a different kind of toughness. And I'm not trying to tell you to add this to your notes.
Yeah.
But he's not afraid of anybody out there. And that's something, even if he's more slight, that I'm like, oh man, like that's the part about Jeudy that I absolutely, it's the route running first and foremost, but he's not some dude who's looking to avoid everybody all the time, which is almost kind of rare in today's game.
I almost wonder though, because when I watched all those Alabama guys, none of the three that are draft eligible, we throw Devontae Smith in there, none of those guys go out of bounds. So sometimes that's something that's preached in the position room, that they are just like, okay, hey, no, we don't run out of bounds. I remember the Terrell Davis used to always tell me about the Broncos. They had that rule with their running backs; they were not allowed to go out of bounds. So I mean, all those guys, compete in that way, no doubt. It's just, Jeudy. He is so loose and fluid, and is such a polished route runner. But when you look at okay, does he have blow the doors off speed? No, not really. And then is he going to be able to just hold up working inside? I mean, those are the nitpicking concerns there with Jerry Jeudy. But and the other thing, the bigger picture thing, Ryan, is when you just look at the sheer number of receivers and, in this draft class, and I've got, about 8 or 9 of them with first round type grades. I don't know that, Jerry Jeudy's top 5 pick. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm taking Jerry Jeudy in top 5 when you tell me I get some of these other guys in the second round, and I can address offensive line, defensive line, where there's not quite the same amount of dudes to pick from. So that's something that'll be factored in once we get to April.
Yeah, it's a bit like the Mike Evans, Odell, was that Sammy Watkins as well?
Yeah, 2014.
Yeah, right. I mean, no, it's a really good point. You're like, okay, if Judy's been, because Jeudy feels like he's been the headliner throughout for this receiver class, at least in the mocks. But it is a great, like if you're talking 8 or 9, which means maybe 7 go, and then somebody's like, hey, in the second round, you start playing with the draft board. It is a good point to be like, maybe the top receiver doesn't go as high as his talent says he should because of the depth.
Yeah, that's usually what it is. When you're in the draft room and you're looking up at your board and you see you have the positions left to right, across the board, and then you have the players underneath it going down, and you look up and you see that stack of wide receivers where you're literally, and I've done this before, we're having to print smaller magnets because we can't fit them all up there because there's so many receivers that are being produced in the college game right now. And then you look over at the offensive tackle board and you're like, wow, I hope we get one of those 3 guys, because after those 3 guys, we don't have anybody till like the 4th round that we like. That kind of changes your decision-making process.
Yeah. Like where would CeeDee Lamb be in all of this? Because as far as hands,
there's teams that have him as the best receiver in the draft. I'm not, look, I have the same
I
grade.
can argue
I have
with
the
them.
Same grade on him. Yeah. Dude, after the catch, he is so tough and so good. And then his high point skills, his ability on 50-50 balls, he's got outstanding hands. He can work inside, outside. I mean, when you look, like a lot of times it's good exercise, as you go, just go look on a website, NFL.com, ESPN, whatever, and sort the receivers by who's playing well, like the production wise. And you're going to see a bunch of guys like Hopkins, like Juju, over the last couple of years. You're going to see Stephon Diggs. You're going to see Cooper Kupp this year. These guys all have something in common, and that none of them are 4.4 guys. They're all 4.5 type guys, and they're just all day tough. And they make contested catches, and they work in traffic. Like that's kind of the way the NFL game's played. And so when I look at CeeDee Lamb, I'm like, dude, this guy's he's not as thick, but he's got a lot of Hopkins to his game, man. I think he's built for the NFL.
Like I'm looking at a depth chart right now, and I mean, look, Chase Claypool for Notre Dame, big kid, almost looks like one of those old school tight end wide receiver hybrids. And I mean, he might be the 15th best receiver in this class. I don't know where you have him. Yeah. This isn't a, hey, stick up for Claypool segment, but how many other guys you think at least, how many total, give me the names of all the people that you think are actually still in play to be like the first or second receiver taken.
Okay. So from the guys that I've done thus far, I'm talking about huge grades I have on these players right now. Jerry Jeudy is a top for me. He's got Jefferson from LSU. We talked about CeeDee Lamb, Ruggs, this kid from Arizona State, Brandon Ayuk, is a stud. I have him up there with that group. You've got Chenault from Colorado, KJ Hamler, this little speedster from Penn State. Devontae Smith is just a little bit below those guys. And then, like, that's the top tier for me right now. You've got Rager up there, who's a speed guy from TCU. And I haven't even done T. Higgins yet. So I haven't done T. Higgins. I haven't done KJ Hill from Ohio State. I mean, there's still a bunch of dudes that I still have yet to do. And that's a boatload of names. Michael Pittman from SC is like, he's got some Mike Williams type ball skills and size. And he's going to be a second round pick, or third round pick, maybe, with all these guys. There's a kid at Liberty, Antonio Gandy Golden, who I watched the other day, who's a monster. He's huge. He's physical. He's not going to run that fast, but he's going to be you're going to get him in the fourth round with all these guys. So, it's loaded, absolutely loaded group.
Yeah, if you're a draft nerd, just go ahead after you listen to this podcast and just click on any of the sites. You're right, because I was doing it this morning, and like the Claypool one that jumped out at me, because every time I watch him, I'm like, man, he is a tough matchup. And you're like, wait a minute, some places have him 20th in this class. It's not me at home going, oh, this website sucks. It's like, this is insane. Okay, so we just did 10 minutes on receivers, so I think we need to not avoid the headline here. And I came away from that game liking Tua even more. But if we're forced to do this, give me your Tua headline, what you think of him right now, and then I have a follow-up, sort of an exercise that I always make myself do, at least with NBA draft guys. All right, so give me your Tua right now, where you're at with him.
Yeah, first of all, I did not get to watch this game on TV, so I went back and just watched the tape. So I kind of heard a little bit of the narrative coming out of the game. Burrow clearly outplays Tua. Tua, once again, doesn't play his best ball in a big game, over the last, we saw it last year at the end of the year. So that was I went into it. I was like, oh gosh, I guess he must have played poor. And I watched the tape. And I'm like, man, if Judy catches that deep post, throw those yards on his day. I thought he played well. I really did. Everything with him is so urgent and so sudden, even when he's got a banged up ankle, just quick feet. He works through progression so fast. And people that, he just throws slants and stuff. No, I don't know. I saw him push the ball down the field in this game. I saw deep digs, tight window throws. Now, he got caught with an underneath coverage. He didn't see a little buzz defender and threw a pick. But overall, and being even somewhat limited with his ability to move around, I thought he competed. I mean, I like Tua. I still have him as the top guy. I thought he was really good in that game. I just don't think their defense could stop anybody. And we can get to Burrow in a second, how well he played. But Alabama didn't lose that game because of Tua. I thought he played well.
Yeah, as far as his limited, when they come right out, they've got the big run, like, oh, here we go. Because, before the game, I'm sitting there going, I don't know. I get a text from somebody I really trust and be like, I have this sinking feeling that Bama's going to roll. And I'm going, well, how could you not? Like, how could you not, especially over the last few years of how this game has played out? But if they're not going to beat him this year with this offense and this team and this NFL depth, like if they can't get him this year, at least make this a one-score game, then when the hell is LSU ever going to get him? And then, I've been around the team leading up to this game before where everything's really positive, really positive. LSU was almost arrogant before this game kicked off. Like, hey, we're going to beat these guys today. And I've never heard them like that. And that was kind of convincing. And then like right before – it wasn't because of that, but a few people had asked me. I was like, I've been wavering, but I was like, I'm just going to pick LSU because I'm picking LSU. But I didn't feel great about it. But Tua, when he had a big run off to the left side where it's like, you know what, he looks fine. And the great thing with him, even though he can run and scare you a little, he doesn't have to. He's not somebody who has to have that element in his game to beat you because he's going to beat you with his arm. I thought he had a couple scrambles on third down where it looked like he had nothing. And he made something out of nothing. That big drive where he converted a 3rd and 19, 4th and 4, 4th and 2. I'm going, like I said, I left that game liking Tua even more as a prospect. But if we are forced to play the game of like, how does he end up being a bust? How would you? Because I was talking to a team just this week, and I was like, what do you think? And the guy that I talked to doesn't like Tua as much, and he was doing he's got NFL guys everywhere. I was like, yeah, okay, but the O-line is not what Bama's usually has at O-line, by the way. And he's like, yeah, whatever. He's like, it could be 3 or 4 first-rounders at running back and receiver. And he was like, when he has that first decisive throw, he gets behind it. But when it's a little bit more of a read, and he reads coverages really Well, he can get a little bit into the pop-up thing where he's just throwing it up in the air for these receivers to run under, and those throws aren't going to work in the NFL. So I was really surprised, but I thought it was really interesting. And again, it's somebody that works for a team versus me just watching the games.
Yeah, no, and there are Tua detractors out there. I just it's funny to me, like, because this is the wound. Like, as scouts, Ryan, and I'm sure it's like this in hoops too, but you have a mistake that you make, and then you see everything through that lens going forward, and you ignore some other examples along the way. So a lot of my scouting friends, like, oh man, this feels like Matt Leinart all over again. Like, he doesn't have like these wow traits. He's surrounded by great players. He puts up big numbers. They win a ton of games, but like, really, how good is he? And they always go back to this Matt Leinart winner. I'm like, guys, we could have said the same thing about Deshaun Watson with all the guys he was throwing to. He's turned out pretty well. Baker Mayfield, early on, that was the talk there. Okay, well, look at all the guys he's had around him. Nobody was said that with him, and he's doing just fine. I mean, there's been a lot of good NFL quarterbacks that played with a lot of great players in college. Like, we can't just use that to dismiss what they're doing. And the other knock that I hear, some people feel like he throws a heavy ball. In other words, like, it just looks like the ball's heavy. It doesn't look like it's, it doesn't just pop. Like, if you watch Herbert throw, it looks like he's throwing a pea. I mean, the ball jumps out of his hand, and it just looks a little bit different. And Tua's ball can have a little bit of a lag on it. So those are the kind of the criticisms I see. But when I watch a lot of these NFL games and I see quick decisions, ball out, a lot of the stuff that he gets criticized for, he's a lot of slants, quick hitters, quick decisions. I'm like, that's Tom Brady and Drew Brees have been playing like that for the last 20 years. Like, you can win a lot of football games playing the way Tua plays because he processes so fast. He's got a quick release, and he's accurate and throws with anticipation. So he doesn't have a howitzer. He's not the same level athlete that Russell Wilson is. But I think the guy's really good.
Where are you with Burrow then?
I like Burrow a lot. I think he's, I haven't put that to bed. I think it's Tua and Burrow. And then for me, there's a little bit of a gap. Then I get to Herbert and the rest of the crew. Look, with Burrow, it's like, okay, what does he do well? Well, he's tough. He's accurate. He makes good decisions. He's got poise. He can extend plays. And I'm like, that's pretty much the checklist. Like, that's what I want. He doesn't have a huge arm. He's not, doesn't have rare size, but I mean, to me, all the things that are the most important about the position, I think of three things. I think of accuracy, decision-making, and poise. Man, you watch this kid this year, he's been nails in all three areas. So I think he's in the mix. I think it's a two-horse race with those guys.
So you have Herbert third?
Yeah, I have Herbert third. I went and saw him play against SC this year. And I think he needs to be in the right spot. If he's in the right spot, he could be outstanding at the next level. And what I mean is run game, play action, shots, like one read throws. He can extend plays. You can move him around a little bit. He'll do great. I think if you're going to plop him, as a lot of these teams do, just plop him in the gun, ask him just, sit, sort, and read and work deep into progressions and be, a precise, accurate passer, I think you'll be disappointed. So I think you better know what you're buying and what you're going to ask him to do.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I've ended up liking him less this year from last year. I just want it to be more consistent.
He wins warm-ups, Ryan. I mean, holy crud. You go out there I was on the field before the game, and there was like 4 or 5 of my scouting buddies. He comes out the tunnel for warm-ups, and everybody's just like, whoa, that dude's a big dude.
No, he's incredibly impressive, and he has moments throughout games where I'm like, okay, yeah, this is why guys are still struggling with the decision on him. But I don't know if I already brought this up on the podcast, so I apologize to the listeners if I did. But I've heard this from a few people now that his personality is not going to leave the room. Like, when he has his interviews, the NFL team that interviews him isn't going to be like, all right, that's our alpha. That's the leader of our franchise for the next 10 years. Yeah. And that's,
that's
like
true.
Roethlisberger was the king of that. Like, I think Roethlisberger is one of the biggest phonies I've ever met in my entire life, but he could convince you in a room that he was going to lead your team. Like he had it down. And there's some gamesmanship to this where if Herbert doesn't figure that out, look, a team's going to draft the guy. This guy's still probably going to go to top 10 as quarterback. We all understand how the game works, but it's just something I consistently hear that there's being humble and then there's being like real passive, and you don't want that to be your quarterback.
That's true. It's interesting because the Pac-12 media days are not far from where I live. So we've set up our podcast down there for the last 3 years, and just it's actually like I feel like I'm running like a cover operation, like it's Argo or something like that, because I'm getting to talk to these prospects before they've got trained by agents, and then my buddies from around the league will call me like, okay, how was he? They'll call me before the Pac-12 media day. Make sure, who are you talking to? I'll give them a list of guys. Okay, make sure you ask this guy this. So I'm trying to get the answers and get before these guys get coached up. But I've talked to Herbert all 3 years because he's been there, and I'll say this: every year he's gotten more comfortable in that setting. It's me and Bucky and him. It's just two former scouts and him, and he's gotten more comfortable in his own skin each year. And this last year, I just asked him. I was like, "Look, you're going to get asked by every team when you come into the draft process is going to be you're a Northwest guy who went to school in the Northwest, and you're going to get drafted. If you're not going to get picked by the Seahawks, you're going to go somewhere else. And how is your personality going to play? How are you going to be able to interact with people just outside this little region of the country? Like, how's that going to fit? How are you going to fit?" And I thought he actually had a pretty good answer, because he was, look, Oregon, we recruit, across the country. So we have kids from all over the place. So I've had a chance to develop these relationships with guys, from all different backgrounds. And when I talk to some other guys on that team and other coaches, they do say he does. He's I think he's going to do it in a little bit quieter fashion, but I left that conversation feeling at least a little more comfortable about that issue.
I want to ask Jeremiah about LSU Ohio State based on his breakdown of scouting guys, but we've got some ads to read, so let's get excited. DraftKings, my friends over at DraftKings, these guys get it. They've launched an online sportsbook created by sports fans for sports fans. And here's real good news if you live in Pennsylvania. It's now available for you in your state. And trust me, DraftKings is hard at work bringing their sportsbook app, which happens to be America's top-rated sportsbook app, everywhere. The DraftKings Sportsbook app has it all. Over-unders, player props, in-game betting, and special odds boost every day for the biggest games. This isn't some offshore operation like other gambling sites. It's a legitimate sportsbook based right here in the U.S., so you can rest assured that your funds are totally secure. DraftKings, the leader in daily fantasy sports, has brought their expertise to legal sports betting. Get in the action whenever in the Keystone State. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and use code RUSSILLO, RUSSILLO, when you sign up. For a limited time, all new and existing users can get a deposit bonus up to $500. That's code RUSSILLO to get a deposit bonus up to $500 only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older. Pennsylvania only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com for details. Deposit bonus requires 25-time playthrough. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Also, recently, our boys at VPN let us know this. Recently, over 100 million people had their personal information stolen in a major data breach. Social security numbers, contact details, credit scores, and more, all taken from Capital One customers. These kinds of attacks are getting more frequent and more severe. It's not just Capital One, Equifax, Facebook, eBay, Uber, PlayStation, and Yahoo all have leaked passwords, credit cards, and bank numbers belonging to billions of users. That's why you need ExpressVPN. You can't control how big corporations mishandle your data, but you can protect yourself. ExpressVPN is an app for your computer and phone that encrypts, secures your data. And if you care about your privacy and safety, you shouldn't go online without ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN connects with just one click. It's lightning fast, costs less than $7 a month. ExpressVPN is rated the #1 VPN provider by TechRadar, CNET, The Verge, and countless others. Go to expressvpn.com/Russillo, RUSSILLO, right now to arm yourself with an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Support the show and protect yourself. That's expressvpn.com/Russillo for an extra 3 months free. Even though, your eye is just different, I imagine you still end up with an opinion breaking down, Ohio State draft eligible players and then breaking down LSU. So based on what you've seen, how would you think those two teams would match up?
It's going to be, I just pray we get it, man. I hope that nobody stubs their toe on the way to this game. So we can see it, because the secondary for Ohio State's one of the best that I've seen, collection of NFL players in their secondary. Okudah, I think, is the top 5 pick all day long. I think Arnett's like a late, late 1, early 2 type player. Sean Wade, who's their nickel, is a second round type player. So these are legit dudes. To get them matched up against those receivers that we talked about a little bit earlier, that would be phenomenal. I think that's almost, I can make a case that I might lean towards Ohio State in that. And then when I look at the D-line for Ohio State versus LSU's offensive line, I think LSU's got a good offensive line, but they have nobody that's going to be able to handle Chase Young. So I think that would be in their advantage as well. I think really the fascinating thing is I think the game kind of comes down to, the experience of Joe Burrow and versus a little bit younger player there that in Fields. And I mean, if you're asking me right now, everything taken all into account, LSU's defense, I think has a lot of really good players. If you're putting it in NFL terms, I think with Delpit's probably a mid 1. And then after that, Chason is probably a 2. The young kids, the young corners, he didn't play his best game against Alabama, but he's a freak show and he's a special player. But I still think, when you match that up with Ohio State and their wide receivers, I think that's more of a wash. So I would give the edge to Ohio State's defense versus LSU's offense. And I think when you flip it over to the other side, I think it's more of a wash. So I would probably lean Ohio State in that one.
Can you, my argument for LSU has been, and just to revisit it with you here, if somebody is telling me I think Ohio State would beat LSU, I think Ohio State is the number 1 team in the country, based on everything I've seen, I couldn't tell that person, hey, you're wrong. But we know LSU's 4 wins are far superior to Ohio State's 4 wins. I don't know how that's debatable.
Yes,
but
for sure.
But Buckeyes fans would certainly make up some stuff and go, no, strength of schedule, if you align Pluto this way, and all this stuff, which every fan base does, but Ohio State's always a little bit extra with it. So when you're watching Ohio State dominate the teams they've gone up against, can you then project like, hey, I actually don't care who their best wins are? Like how crisp they are, their execution on offense. Like I've watched Ohio State this year on offense being like, if they wanted to score 100 points in this game, I think they could.
Yeah.
And that's like, are you able to do that and go, I don't care the opposition. Some of these things are so clear that I'm okay with who they haven't played.
I am. And I mean, I have more work to do on their offensive guys. I haven't done Dobbins. There's people that think Dobbins is the best running back in the draft. On some teams that I've talked to, they love him. I haven't had a chance to dig in and watch him yet. I've peeked some of the receivers. I haven't done KJ Hill yet, but so I mean they've got NFL guys over there. My thing is, I just look at their defense and I look at the talent of those guys and I look at the sheer number of first and second round picks that they have, and I really don't care who they're playing against. I mean it's going to overwhelm just about everybody they play. Now LSU, LSU. When I look around the country, I think LSU and Bama, I mean, those are teams that can stack up. I still think it leans towards Ohio State. I just think they got better dudes, man.
Yeah, no counter to that one. And because even though I think LSU's defense is better than, look, statistically going into the Bama game, it was much better than people thought. And it's still, I think, 30th in yards allowed per play, which isn't great, especially by LSU standards. Mm-hmm. But I just, this thing all year long where people are acting like it's this defense that can't get any stops, and they allowed 1 offensive possession touchdown the first 40 minutes of the game at Tuscaloosa until all hell broke loose at the end of it. Do you watch a team that's at the top that you can't believe how well they're doing it without NFL talent?
Well, I mean, I think Minnesota and Baylor. I'll admit it. I said, PJ Fleck, genius move to get that contract done, take the Florida State momentum, get that contract negotiated, get that thing signed before Penn State blows your doors off. And they went and won that game. So I didn't see that coming. And then Baylor, I know the schedule hasn't been, all that ridiculous, but I was there. I went and spent time with them and visited with their team after Rule's first year. So going into before last season. And they just didn't have a lot of dudes, man. And it was so bad when he got there. I'm the biggest Matt Rule fan there is, but I did not think he would get them to this point this fast. So those would be the 2 that I would probably be the most surprised about.
Okay, 5 questions. sometimes rapid fire, sometimes not rapid fire to close it out here with Daniel. Give me, other than Chase Young, which we can't do, he's not allowed to be an answer here, a defensive player you're absolutely falling in love with here as the season's finishing up.
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I'll tell you what, who it would have been, the way he started the season would have been Kinlaw at South Carolina, but then he's gotten worse as we've come down the stretch here. So I'll punt on that one. I'll go with Simmons. I'll go Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. He's so good, man. He can do so many different things, and so many teams are looking for linebackers that can cover tight ends. You can rush him a little bit if you want. He's just a real versatile, explosive player.
Okay, give me a quarterback that you still hold out hope for that's in the NFL now, that's given you no evidence that you should still be holding out hope for this quarterback.
Look, I was a big Sam Darnold guy coming in, and it hasn't been great this year, obviously. I just think that, I think he's got a chance not only to be survive as a starter. I still think he's got a chance to be really, really good, man. They have no offensive line. There's not a lot of weapons around him. The poor tight ends, like their best guy, and he can't stay healthy in Herndon. So I'm going to say that one. I think some people might have punted on him already. I wouldn't do that.
Did you ever, as a former player, sort of, did you ever have to run routes when you were working in a front office because they needed bodies? Did you ever have to throw? Oh
yeah. Well, I would throw all the linebacker workouts. So when you go to these pro days, and you're with the same group of scouts. Like if you're on the West Coast, scouting the West Coast, you're just going from school to school during pro day season. And so you kind of assign different drills to different people. And, you have a quarterback there that throws to the receivers, with that graduating class usually. But when you're working out defensive players, specifically linebackers, somehow I became the throwing quarterback. Dude, I would have to I'd go home. I can remember leaving San Diego State when they had Kirk Morrison when he was coming out, and it was driving rain, and I threw this pro day, and the ball was so wet, and it got so heavy, and dude, my arm, I'm going to have shoulder surgery because I'm just throwing linebacker workouts. What is wrong with me? But yeah, I had to be that guy. I did not enjoy it.
What was your best story then from throwing? Was there ever anybody who was wondering? There has to be at least one story in all these travels where you were throwing in some of these workouts where somebody either was really impressed with you or maybe not impressed. I don't know. There has to be something there.
Oh gosh, that's a great question.
Because your Kyle Bowler story, the pickup hoops thing, is still my all-time in the history of podcasts. When you realized that Bowler wasn't going to be a great quarterback because he couldn't read the screen.
That was not good. That was a bad omen. Gosh. You know what? I'm gonna switch gears because I'm gonna go. It's not in my scouting career. I haven't told you my Skycam story. I don't think. Have I, Ryan?
No, I can't wait though.
So I'm working. I'm working right out of college. I get hired by Jay Rothman and Chip Dean, who I'm sure you know. They're over there at ESPN. They were doing Sunday Night Football, and this is my first job. So I'm a spotter up in the booth. This is the Joe Theismann, Paul McGuire era. And
Mike Patrick,
and Mike Patrick, yes, who was awesome. What a great guy. So I'm this young guy that's just hired. I'm just a behind the scenes guy. I'm a spotter. I'm also the ENG producer, which, I mean, you're going around with camera guys who've shot these scenic shots for 20 years. And I'm basically I'm not telling these guys what to do. I don't know anything about camera work. I'm just basically making the phone call to make sure we can get into the building we need to get in to shoot. So that was my job. So one of our first games that year, we were playing. There was a game, the Giants game, and they said and I get in there a Thursday for a Sunday game, and they said, "Hey, there's this new technology, this thing called the Skycam. There's these cables, and it's a camera attached to them, and it kind of flies around. But we want to use it in a game, but you got to experiment with it a little bit and give it a test run. So." We know you played quarterback in college. Can you just go round up a bunch of guys from the crew, and we're going to just get them out there? We're going to run a bunch of routes out here at the Meadowlands and let the camera kind of follow you around so they can test this thing out. So it's the kickoff game, Ryan. So it's the first year, one of the first years they had concerts before the NFL season to kick it off.
Before
so this is Bon Jovi's going to, yeah. Yeah. Before the Epic Genesis halftime show. So they've got Bon Jovi is going to do it. So I'm out there with a bunch of these, grunts out there, and we're running routes, and this camera's flying around. So nobody's ever seen anything like this. And then Bon Jovi's doing his sound check, and he sees us just throwing the ball around. And so he comes over. He's like, "Yeah, I want to get in on this." I'm like, "Yeah, you're my ex, dude. Go out there." I'm literally throwing routes to John Bon Jovi while the Skycam is being tested out to see if this thing is a useful idea. And I remember just going back and like, my life does not get any better than this. Like, this is like the high point. It's all downhill from here.
Was he good? How were his routes? How were his hands?
No, he was not. Obviously size was not in his favor. I think I maybe threw him a ball, and then he was just using him to run off coverage.
Okay. Last one here. You can pick. You mentioned the Bama guys having that rule about not going out of bounds. You mentioned Terrell Davis saying all the running backs in our room, you can't go out of bounds. Was there any great rule that you can share with us that you had with your time? I'm assuming probably more so with your Ravens front office run, or you can tell me your favorite draft day story where it got, I don't know, really dramatic. Something went wrong. Maybe something you haven't shared.
Oh, that's a good one. We were in like the 6th round. And we had this receiver out of northern Arizona. That was in Baltimore that we really liked. 5th or 6th round, I can't remember. But his name was Clarence Moore. And so one of the things you had to do when you're getting ready to pick somebody, you want to make sure they're not dead. So you always call them. You see the video when you're watching the draft, the guy's getting on the phone. It's not just to congratulate him. You want to make sure the guy's okay and all that. So you always do that, and you always wait until you've made the decision. And so we're like, okay, a couple minutes left on the clock. Okay, Clarence Moore, call him. We're taking him. So call him, and then hand the phone off to the owner, Steve Bisciotti, and he's congratulating him. And then all of a sudden the phone rings, and I don't remember if it was Ozzie Newsome or Eric DaCosta, but somehow we got a like literally last minute trade offer to trade out of the pick, which they decided to do. And so here I'm a young guy. I'm looking at our owner, and I'm like looking at Mr. Bisciotti, like, you've got to get off the phone with this guy. Like, we're not picking him, we're trading. And he's trying to figure out, how do I end this call? Like, this guy's just crying tears of joy, the happiest day of his life. We've just picked you. You're a Baltimore Raven. Then it's like literally like, gotta go. No, sorry. And then like, it was the most uncomfortable thing. And then I was the one when we had traded down a ways, he was still there when we had our next pick. So to call him back, and it was he was not happy, like calling him, like celebrate being picked. And he was like, it was just an awkward, weird conversation. Like, no, this time's for real. Yeah, we are. No. Yep. We're going to pick you this time. No, I know. Sorry about that. Yeah. Crazy thing. But this is good. This is real. This is real. I know you already talked to the owner, so we don't need to do that again. But anyways, let me give you to the head coach. It was a very awkward draft phone call. Big dude,
6'6", 220. Clarence Kelly Moore out of Northern Arizona with the 199th pick, and he ended up playing, I don't know, a bunch of games that first year, and then would he get hurt or something?
Yeah, I think he had a couple touchdowns. I know, like we
had 4 his rookie year.
Yeah, Billick. I know Billick called him Stretch. That was his not so creative nickname, but it didn't last that long. But he had a good couple games there.
Good stuff. All right, he is Daniel Jeremiah, NFL Network, and at Move the Sticks on Twitter. His Move the Sticks podcast is a must listen for NFL and draft people. So as always, man, enjoy the weekend. Thank you.
You're the best. See you, bud.
Okay, hope you enjoyed the pod today, and I guess I don't really have a ton to say. What do you got planned, Kyle?
It was my birthday on Tuesday. I might get a little silly this weekend. Oh no!
Happy birthday! Thanks, what are you going to dress up as?
Dress up as?
Oh, I thought
you, huh?
You guys aren't still celebrating Halloween?
No, I hate Halloween. I'm just gonna get silly, man. I'm gotta get my own insurance this year. Get my shit together. So,
what does you getting your shit together entail? Give me that. Like, what's your to-do list look like?
Well, got to stop taking the bus and riding these bikes around town and maybe figure out how to get a car,
You don't own a car?
Dude, I got one when I came out here. I used all my college graduation work money and bought a Lemon. It was a convertible, though, and the transmission went. And then, now I take the bus and scooters and bikes and try not to get hit,
You're a big bike guy, huh?
Yeah, the electric bikes, My regular bike got stolen a while ago, so.
Where do you live?
I'm like West Hollywood. I'm right in the thick of it.
You are in it, huh? What's your favorite club to go to? Are you a club guy?
I'm not a club guy, dude. I hate the club.
Yeah, but you never go like every now and then. You kind of
No, I do. I go around, I stand around, and I'm like, oh, we don't have a seat. Cool. I guess I'll stand by this bar and pay $17. So I go to the bars where they take care of me.
I think we need to do some sort of package where you get to hang out with Kyle. Like, forget these high end ones.
Like a charity buzz?
Yeah, we get the full Kyle experience. Like, what's your go-to night? Are you a Thursday night guy because you're so young?
Oh, dude, I used to go every night. Now it's like, no, because now I got you at Friday morning, so I got to take it easy. It used to be.
Did you go out last night?
No, I didn't. I did not. So I'm like a Friday, Saturday guy. No, maybe Monday night football.
You're a grown-up weekend drinker.
Yeah.
How old are you? 25?
Yeah,
26?
yeah. I'll be 26 in like 2-3 days.
Okay. All right. Yeah, you're really young. I remember the first time one of my friends, I think we were all like 25, 26, and the guy was like, yeah, I only go out Friday or Saturday. And we were like, what? Like, what the hell's wrong with you, dude?
No, you can't be fucking up the Bill Simmons, Ryen Russillo podcast.
No, but it was like the first realization
I see.
Of a group, because when you're younger, you just go, everybody.
Yeah, so what time
first
are we
of all,
showing
college,
up?
right?
Right.
Yeah. First of all, the college. And then as soon as those first few years out of college, it's like, okay, well, I go out Fridays and Saturdays. I think my favorite was always kind of the Thursday happy hour crew that would go to work, or they like, oh, no way, you wear a suit to work, and now you're having a couple sarsaparillas at a place with like a window, thing where the doors are open and everybody looks the same and they're all dressed up. But these are all just things you do. Like now I walk by that crew and go, see, I never had a suit though. So I didn't do that. So if I went to like a bigger city to go visit friends and to do that, it would be like, oh, you guys are all in your suits.
Be the odd guy out in your tech pants or something.
No, I wasn't wearing tight pants back then.
Okay.
I mean, tight pants were not cool.
Yeah,
now
I'm new development.
Now I'm trying to figure out how skinny is too skinny for a pair of jeans for a 40-year-old,
Word.
Did I tell you that I went to, I don't think maybe I didn't tell anybody the story because I shouldn't, because it's so lame. But the Rag & Bone jean situation right now is on fire. Rag & Bone's got the best jean in the game.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Oh, it's man.
The crotch blowout, though. I'm trying not to let them go, but they got a huge
that's tough.
hole in
I don't know. If anybody at Ringer says, does Russillo want to do reads for Rag & Bone, you can tell him yes.
Gotcha.
So the first time I tried on the Rag & Bone skinny jean, I was like, come on, man. I'm like, you can't do this, And despite for all the leg day jokes, like I have thick legs, man. I don't know what to tell you. And so the guy was like, hey, they look great. Like, do they?
Yeah, thanks.
And he's like, look, he goes, just trust me. They stretch a little bit because it's a one, the game. It's a 1, 2, and 3 on Rag & Bone jeans.
Right.
And these are 2s. And I was like, can I? He goes, look, they're going to stretch a little. He goes, but when they wash, they come back. He's like, I'm telling you, they're the most comfortable thing. They look good. He's like, you're good. You're good here. I was like, all right. And you know what? They're the favorite pair of jeans I have right now. I can't wear them enough.
I hope the crotch holds up, buddy.
I hope so too. I'm probably not. They're probably in and out of rotation a little bit more than say
you're right.
A guy that has less jeans.
You're right about that.
So to finish the story, because now I can't even believe I'm doing this, but whatever. I go back to the New York one because it was like the last stretch that I was going to have probably in New York for ESPN stuff, and that would be like I'd go out there every few months and look at some stuff, and they used to take care of me. They do like a lot of those shops. You're like, hey, can we work on something? And they're like, yeah, 10-15% off, not a big deal. NBD, just on TV. And so the guy's like, hey, I brought you some jeans, and he starts throwing some ones at me. And I go, what are you doing? I'm like, these aren't going to fit me. And he looked at me and he said, hey, he's like, your legs aren't that big. They're pretty skinny, So he's like, you'll be fine. So now I'm furious at this guy for saying that to me. And by the way, here's another thing for retail shops. You should have mandatory breath checks every 30 minutes to an hour for every one of your people, okay? because there's just not. Look, sometimes people have bad breath. Some people always have bad breath, but some people just have it at times. I mean, I know I've had bad breath at times. You eat the wrong thing, you don't take care of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it happens. But if you're a shop owner, manager, you should have mandatory breath checks on all of your salespeople, because there's nothing that makes me want to buy jeans less than bad breath. But even more so than bad breath is insulting my legs. So when he said you'll fit in the ones, your legs aren't that big, I'm already hate trying on this stuff. And despite the stack of, let's say a healthy credit card bill worth of clothes that I'm thinking of, just because it's easier for me to shop when I went to New York City than when living in Los Angeles, because I don't feel like driving up to go shopping. I mean, that's the last thing you want to do. You never want to drive anywhere when you live here. And then to be like, hey, you know what I'm going to do? Go to a mall and sit in traffic for an hour to go to the mall. Peace. No thanks. So I try the first pair of ones on. I can't even get them over my calf. And I just go, fuck this guy.
You should have flexed in him and busted out of him just to show him.
And I'm like doing exasperated theatrical, like, oh my, this fucking guy. What legs? Fucking bad breath. And I took the jeans off. I left everything. I go, hey man, I'm out of here. And he was like, what? Nothing fit? I'm like, I couldn't even get them over my calves. And I left. So I'm a loser. Enjoy your weekend. Kyle, happy birthday.
Thanks, buddy.